abundance in our lives. I heard someone say one time, you can't outgive the universe. And it's true, you know. No matter how much love you give, you're not depleting that love like it's a pie and you're cutting up a piece and distributing pieces of this 100% of a pie to someone else. The more you give out, the more you give back. The universe has never been able to be outgiven when it comes to love and service and gratitude. What are you going to concentrate on? What subjects? And what are you going to spend your time on when you get out of here? There's that famous line in the Bible that says, where there is no vision, if you allow me the latitude, where there is no purpose, people perish. Remember the movie Dead Poets Society? If you remember the kid that wanted to be the actor, and his dad just wouldn't tolerate it. It wasn't his dad's plan for his son. And he pulled him out of the theater and took him home and told him he would never be on stage ever again. And took away the thing that kid loved, his purpose more than anything else. And of course we know in the movie, he took out a gun and committed suicide. Where there is no purpose, where there is no vision, the people perish. And then, you know, if we look at a continuum of purpose in life from no purpose, the next level up are people that have a purpose, but they're not really clear on what it is. You know, they know they got to get up every morning, they got to get the kids to work or to school, they've got to get to work, they've got to put some food on the table, they have some responsibilities, perhaps on a religious level, but it really isn't a life of really clear and committed and dedicated purpose. It's more of a life of survival and getting by. And then you come up a little bit from that. There are people that know what their purpose is, and you always see them on and off purpose. When I left my practice in Kansas City decades ago to start teaching in chiropractic, I turned the practice over to a guy who was so skilled and competent. And his problem wasn't that he didn't know who he was and what he was supposed to be doing with his life, is that he just kept getting distracted by things. First he got distracted by the no tax movement. Then he got distracted with some evangelical movements. And every time he'd get distracted and off track of what he was doing as a chiropractor, all of a sudden his practice would suffer and then he'd have to come back to point. And so he was in and out of purpose all the time and his practice was up and down. You know, I have a brother who's a Southern Baptist minister. My father was a chiropractor. Of the 5 kids, we always knew, although he was a sweet, kind, gentle guy, would never push us in any direction, that if we really wanted to please him, we'd either become chiropractors or ministers. He got 2 chiropractors and a Southern Baptist minister out of the 5 of us. I love what my brother does. That's what he was called to do. But while I respect that and honor that and have my own views on that, it's not the purpose that I was called to do. You got to be clear on what your purpose is. And the people that are clear on that have what I would call being on purpose. They are result-oriented, they're powerful, they make changes in the world. And some of the people in our positive psych department remind me from time to time, Hitler was on purpose, wasn't he? Hitler was on purpose with what he did. The problem was his purpose was screwed up. And so there's one level of purpose that I would put above that. I just call it, for lack of a better term, high purpose. And in this category, there are people like Mother Teresa, for example. And there are certain values that these people live by. At the university, we call it compassionate leadership. Not just leadership, not just purpose, but compassionate purpose, compassionate leadership. It has as its ethos some values like we won't use physical insult, violence, in order to perpetuate our ideas against someone else's ideas or life. It has within it that the quality of our arguments and our positions and our beliefs should stand on their own. And that if people are understanding of them, can participate and agree with them, or at least if they're not, we can come to agreement and have tolerance in our relationship with each other. I saw a bit of this just a month or so ago with the Life Talks program put on by Dr. LaMarche. And we were looking at integrity from birth to death. What would happen if we had integrity in the birth process and honored the natural process? What would happen if we had integrity in the process of raising our children and the information that we get from the authorities like the Centers for Disease Control, etc., along the way? What would happen if we had integrity even in birth. And one of the speakers on this last subject was a woman by the name of Scarlett Lewis, who sent her son off to school one morning to elementary school at Sandy Hook. And that day, one of the students walked in, took out a gun, and shot over 30 of those students, killing them. And her son was one of those kids, but he was the kid that when the gunman ran out of ammunition, he stood up and screamed to the other kids to race out right then. And a bunch of kids raced out safely. He stood there between those kids and the gunman, trying to interfere with him, reloading his gun as much as he possibly could. Once his gun was reloaded, he immediately turned the gun on Scarlett Lewis's son and shot him and killed him. And when she got home, after dealing with all the issues you would imagine dealing with that day, on the refrigerator was a message about love and appreciation that her son had posted before he went to school that morning. Almost as if he knew something was going to happen. And Scarlett Lewis, at the highest level, and I understand it, had every right to be angry, want retribution, to have hate, but she found a way to have forgiveness and compassion and reconciliation, and is changing people's lives because of it. Where are you going to spend your time? And what subjects are you going to focus on? I was doing a tour across the country, and I was in Sacramento, and there were about 500 people there that evening, and there was a guy on the front row who was just, you could just tell he was the most ornery, cantankerous, nasty, black cloud hanging over him kind of guy. And he sat through the session, arms crossed, no facial expressions. One of the things that I did on this tour, at the end of the tour, was ask people to do 5 things within the next 24 hours after hearing the lecture. And one of them was to go home and call the most important person in your life, or go see them, and tell them how much they mean to you. When you get out of your own way and start acknowledging other people's contribution and your appreciation and love for them, I promise you your life changes when that happens. I did that with my dad one Sunday. My dad, as I mentioned, was this kind, gentle guy, but he grew up in that generation where you don't talk about how much you love each other. And while we knew he did, I like to talk about it. And I remember calling him up one Sunday after a seminar, and I said to him, he had no idea what was coming. He couldn't have provided me an opening even if he wanted to. So I just had to blurt out to him, "Dad, I love you." And he got real quiet on the other end of the line. And then I just started talking to him about all the things he'd meant to me in my life. I have no idea how long we were on that line. We were in that zone where time ceases to exist. And I could tell he was crying on the other end of the line. I was choking out things. And there was a moment in time when I realized I'd said everything that I needed to say to him. And I didn't know how to end it. There was just this long pause. And then I'll never forget what he said. After the most extended pause you can imagine, he said, "Great, want to talk to your mom?" I have to tell you, my relationship and my hugs with my dad for the rest of his lifetime, and while they had always been fantastic, they were better. They were different from that point on. And so I'm telling this story in Sacramento, and rarely do I get to find out whether people actually go home and do these things or what the consequences are. But the chiropractor who had brought him to this lecture, I saw him a week later in Phoenix. And he said to me, "I have to tell you what happened after the lecture." He said, "We invited this guy," and he tried to explain to me. I said, "I know the guy, I could tell from the front of the stage." He said, "The staff and I even had a conversation about maybe we shouldn't invite him to this kind of evening. He might just create too much negative energy around it. But we decided we'd invite him. We figured he wouldn't come anyway. So we invited him, and unfortunately his wife made him come." And he sat through the whole thing, and the next week, this last week, he came in for his appointment. And after he got his adjustment, he said, "I want to talk to you privately." And the chiropractor said, "Oh man, I just did not want to get cornered by this guy in a room with a closed door behind us." He said, but the guy was insistent. Pulled him into the room, and as soon as they got the door closed, he started to cry. And the story he told the chiropractor was that 17 years earlier, He and his son had had such a fight that they hadn't talked in 17 years. And in those 17 years, his son had gotten married, had had 2 children. He'd never met his son's wife, had never seen his grandkids. And he said, at the end of Dr. Reekman's thing, I went home that night, and I called up my son, and we're getting together this weekend. You know what? A simple acknowledgement of forgiveness can erase 17 years of hate and anger in a matter of seconds. The human spirit thrives for it and thrives on it. So as you get ready to leave Life University, if you walk out of this fantastic place, I'd like you to always remember when you get up in the morning, what am I going to spend my time doing? Where am I going to focus? Graduates, congratulations. We're proud of you, and we hope that you come back and fill the hole that you're going to leave in our hearts when you walk out of Life University. Thank you.